Chapter 571, Huge Pressure. Audrey simply mentioned the ancient folk song, but she didn't describe the content in detail. She was afraid that the knowledgeable Ma'am Hermit would be able to guess at the exact location. She only mentioned the inspiration she had, and how she used a psychological cue to retain her lucidity in her dream before beginning a magical journey. Psychological cue, she knows how to plant a psychological cue. She's likely a Sequence 7 psychiatrist. Katlia habitually made a judgment, but she immediately felt even more perplexed. Then, why would she be buying the Beyonder characteristic of a psychiatrist? Taking the same potion gives a limited increase in strength while being prone to losing control. Furthermore, it will be an obstacle towards the digestion of the potion. To create a mystical item, but this will overlap with her own Beyonder powers. There's no value to that. To give it to someone else. Amidst Katlia's guesses, Audrey had already mentioned her chaotic dream and how she came to the edge of her conscious. Then, she used the conjuring method she learned from Mr. Fool to create a staircase that led downwards. She then slowly delved deep into her conscious. She didn't describe in detail the various points of light in her subconscious, as it involved embarrassing secrets she didn't wish to share. She focused on her lonely and long journey with no end in sight. She also expressed how there were various monsters hiding in the surrounding grayness that placed immense pressure on her. She mentioned how she nearly broke down several times and barely managed to endure it thanks to her Beyonder powers. Then, she reached the point of her finally arriving at the illusory sea of collective subconscious. The memory imprints of the human pioneers and the spread and reflection of the consciousness of the surrounding creatures were presented under Audrey's coherent and unhurried descriptions. Then, it was fixed onto the dragon with grayish stone scales that had flown out from the sea of collective subconscious. There's a dragon that lives in the sea of collective subconscious. What a magical and beautiful journey. Although Miss Justice didn't encounter any enemies or danger, it still leaves me a little surreal. Forrest suddenly thought of a title of a book, Miss Justice's Dream Tour. While rounding things up, Audrey scanned the area and asked, "Ladies and gentlemen, do you have any suggestions? Do you think that the Dragon City of Miracles, Liveside, is also hidden in the sea of collective subconscious? If I wish to continue searching, what should I take note of? What advanced preparations do I need to make?" The hanged man Alger glanced at the hermit and said in a serious tone, "I don't think you should continue exploring. It's a very dangerous act. According to the records, most dragons are creatures with flesh and blood. This includes the mind dragon. By allowing itself to survive and swim through the so-called sea of collective subconscious, it means that the dragon you saw was a sufficiently high sequence. At the very least, it's at the level of a demigod. Before you reach Sequence 5, it's best that you don't consider this." Katlia nodded and said, "There are many other dangerous things in the sea of collective subconscious, the accumulated maleficent thoughts of humanity, the desires that can corrupt soul bodies, the terrifying memories since ancient times that resemble storms and waves at sea. All of these will deal severe psychological harm to you. It might prevent you from ever waking up. Besides, that's the sea of collective subconscious of all creatures, which isn't only limited to humans. There might be evil spirits, evil gods, or the consciousness of some terrifying existence hidden in there. They're like gigantic maelstroms that can devour ships. Before you truly acquire Beyonder powers that allow you to travel through the sea of collective subconscious, it's best not to rashly explore too deeply." Audrey, who was filled with expectations, felt disappointed. However, she couldn't help but admit that Mr. Hanged Man and Ma'am Hermit had spoken very logically and sincerely. She silently inhaled and said to herself, "Audrey, don't be headstrong. Wait till your Sequence 5 before making the attempt again." She totally didn't consider how difficult it was to become a Sequence 5. At that level, one could even compete to become one of the 7 pirate admirals, or even make the 7 become 8. From Audrey's point of view, with Mr. Fool and the Tarot Club, as long as she was careful and calm, she would definitely be able to successfully attain that level in a year or 2 if she didn't take unnecessary risks. Only the gate to being a demigod was hard to push open. Ma'am Hermit knows a lot and is very knowledgeable. Audrey clung onto the last sliver of hope and looked towards Mr. Fool at the end of the table, hoping that this godlike existence would provide a suggestion that was different from Mr. Hanged Man or Ma'am Hermit. "Don't look at me, I have no idea." Klein tried his best not to blink. His understanding of the conscious, subconscious, and the collective subconscious was still stuck at a theoretical level that spirit medium Dolly had described. He didn't understand anything more. Despite having his dreams intruded frequently, he had never thought of exploring the world outside the dream despite retaining his lucidity. Therefore, how was he to provide any suggestions to Miss Justice? In fact, he had a natural idea regarding this. However, he wasn't sure if it would work without having done any verification. In the past, even if he lacked the confidence, he could vaguely make a comment, but now, with Admiral of Stars Catlia sitting at the side, watching, it only made it easier for him to make mistakes the more he spoke. The less he spoke, the fewer mistakes he would commit, and there was no chance of making mistakes by keeping silent. What a pressure-inducing new member. Klein sighed inwardly. He didn't say a word and maintained his faint smile. If not for him being above the gray fog and how he existed in the form of a spirit body, he suspected that such highly difficult acting would make the muscles around his eyes spasm. Mr. Fool doesn't have any suggestions. Audrey retracted her gaze in depression. She stopped fantasizing about exploring the sea of collective subconscious so soon. At this moment, the Moon Emlyn, who was already turning impatient, cleared his throat. "I've seriously researched the history handed down by a Sanguine." "Sanguine? He really is a vampire. Nurturing vampires and pulling vampires into the church is really a tradition of the Church of Earth Mother." Catlia nodded, as she looked like she was listening seriously. Meanwhile, she felt that some of her conclusions needed adjustments. The moon directly expressed his identity. Does this mean that Mr. Fool has a potent deterrence, even in the outside world, that the members aren't afraid of information being leaked? It seems like I don't have to completely hide my circumstances. Emlyn paused and looked at the sun before tipping his chin. Before the cataclysm, there was no city of silver, only the kingdom of silver. If it were anyone else who had thrown such doubt on him, Derek would have hastened to retort, expressing the fact that the people of the city of silver were descendants of the kingdom of silver and that he hadn't lied. However, after glancing at Mr. Moon and sensing his smugness, Derek turned his head to the side, feeling that an explanation was beneath him. Why must I let an arrogant vampire, who doesn't acknowledge the city of silver's history, believe me? He thought silently to himself. From his reaction, Emlyn could tell that the city of silver was indeed related to the kingdom of silver. He tusked and said, "The faith of the kingdom of silver wasn't originally giant King Amir, but his queen, Umbella." "Umbella?" Derek turned his head and blurted out, "Our city of silver has no records of this matter, nor are there any records of a queen named Umbella." Emlyn chuckled and spread out his hands. "That's why there's nothing wrong with me saying that your city of silver's history is flawed and incomplete, right? Clearly, there are mistakes in your records of Sanguine history. You took such a roundabout way to prove this. Should I say that a vampire like you has clear logic, or that you're someone who bears grudges?" Klein held back his laughter and stopped himself from sizing up Emlyn White. The moon and the sun's debate benefited him greatly, allowing him to know that the giant queen, the goddess of harvest, was named Umbella. The sun, Derek, was just about to give a retort to Mr. Moon when he heard Ma'am Hermit speak. "Umbella is the goddess of harvest from the second epic. She's also the queen of the giant king's court. Legend has it that she perished at the end of the second epic, but it's impossible to verify since no one has seen her corpse or relics. The goddess of harvest is really named Umbella." Derek was stunned. He wished to retort, but he was unable to say a word as this matter proved that the history of the city of silver had several holes. He instantly felt somewhat aggrieved. When Emlyn saw this, he felt good. Pleasure rose from the depths of his heart. After another round of exchanges, the tarot gathering came to an end. Klein smiled and said, "Everyone, we shall meet next week." "By your will," Audrey immediately got up to bow. The others weren't any slower, including the hermit Catlia. Upon returning to reality, Admiral of Stars, Katlia looked at the shattered celestial globe on her desk. She then seriously recalled what had happened at the gathering. A few details made her believe that the Tarot Club involved itself in many matters that made it nothing to scoff at, and hidden deep in the gray fog was Mr. Fool. Like the world, who was hidden behind thick shadows, he was unreadable and unfathomable. It was unknown what he was planning. After more than 10 seconds of silence, Katlia retrieved a pen and some paper and wrote while deliberating. Someone has been deliberately collecting the Emperor's diary pages. She didn't dare to expose any information that involved the Tarot Club, as she was afraid of being punished by Mr. Fool. All she could do was give a heads up on things that could be discovered under ordinary circumstances. After she was done writing and folding the letter, she took out a golden, exquisite harmonica she carried with her. Putting it to her lips, she blew it. In the blink of an eye, she saw the letter strangely vanish. Even though she wasn't wearing her glasses, she was unable to discover the arrival of the messenger. Phew! Katlia sighed and reached for her forehead and said silently, "The pressure is really huge when participating in a gathering while under the supervision of a god." With Admiral of Stars joining, the pressure on me as the Fool has greatly increased. Klein rubbed his temples above the gray fog and directly returned to the real world. He wanted to attempt the inspiration Miss Justice had received from exploring her dreams.